Okay, so we are reading James Redfield, the Celestine Prophecy. We are on the chapter Interpersonal Ethics, page number 243 of the book and 136 of the PDF.
I don't think they would stop Father Paul, Sanchez said. He is not well known. At that moment, Julia came back into the room and saw Sanchez. The two hugged warmly, and again, I introduced Connor. As I spoke, Connor seemed to grow even more fearful, and after only a few minutes, Sanchez told him that it was time for Father Paul to start back. Connor left to his belongings from his room and quickly returned. Both Sanchez and Julia escorted him outside, but I told him goodbye there and waited at the table. I wanted to think. I knew meeting Connor was significant somehow, and that Sanchez finding us here was important, but I couldn't quite figure it out. Something was going to happen here, she said. If we hadn't stopped, we wouldn't have seen Sanchez or Connor for that matter. By the way, what did you learn from Connor? I'm not sure yet, I said. Where is Father Sanchez? He checked into a room to rest for a while. He hasn't slept in 2 days. I looked away. I knew that Sanchez was tired, but hearing that he was unavailable disappointed me. I wanted very much to talk with him, to see if he could add some perspective to what was happening, especially concerning the soldiers. I felt uneasy, and part of me wanted to flee with Connor. Julia picked up on my impatience. Take it easy, she said. Slow down and tell me what you think of the eighth insight so far. I looked at her and tried to center myself. I'm not sure where to start.
Okay, so one
What do
second.
you think the eighth
One
insight
second.
is?
Now, over here, she says very clearly, slow down and tell me what you think of the eight insights. So, slowing down, this is a very important thing. All of us are constantly running. We are constantly running. And at the end of the day, if you really look back, where are you running? Why are you running? You really don't know. Okay. So, slowing down is a very, very important thing. Whenever we are going into a spiritual quest, allowing things to come to us and slowing down our thinking process and the pace at which we run becomes extremely important. Otherwise, we miss the detail. It's like, these bus drivers, they speed on the road. Why? To complete, I mean, to get to the point that the passenger will get on the bus quickly. Now, how do they know that by reaching first, there will be more passengers or less passengers? You might as well go at a nice pace and allow what happens to happen. Okay. So most of the time when they are speeding down, there's a chance of accident. They are stressed out because they are speeding, uh, and they really have no clue whether the passenger will be there or not. Maybe they'll leave and then the passenger will come. So what's the point of speeding? So we are, all of us are actually running our life like that speeding bus, not realizing that speeding really is not necessary. And wandering, just going through the whatever is coming into our life is a much better way to live life because it's more stress free.
What do you think the eighth insight is saying? I thought back. It's about a way of relating to other people, to children, and to adults. It's about naming control dramas and breaking through them and focusing on other people in a way that sends them energy. What do you think the eighth insight is saying? I thought back. It's about a way of relating to other people, to children and to adults. It's about naming control dramas and breaking through them and focusing on other people in a way that sends them energy.
So this is
And
this is very, very important. Okay. When we start noticing the control drama, that means that we are becoming aware of them. And only when we start becoming aware of our control drama can we transcend them. Otherwise, it is not possible to transcend them.
And she asked. I focused on her face and immediately saw what she was getting at. And if we are observant about who to talk with, then we get the answers we desire as a result.
So now again, what is the point over here? That we need to start paying attention as to what is happening around us, what is showing up in our lives, and then to be able to engage it in a way that will create value in our life.
Julia smiled broadly. Have I grasped the insight? I asked. Almost, she said. But there's one more thing. You understand how one person can uplift another. Now you're about to see what happens in a group when all the participants know how to interact this way.
So this is where group energy comes from. Okay. Now, when everyone in the group is sending everyone else energy, then what happens is that the whole group's energy automatically rises.
I walked out to the porch and sat in one of the wrought iron chairs. After a leisurely dinner without much talking, and afterward had decided to sit outside in the night air. 3 hours had gone by since Sanchez had gone to his room, and I was beginning to feel impatient again. When Sanchez suddenly walked outside and sat down with us, I was relieved. Have you heard anything about Will? I asked him. When I spoke, he slid his chair around to face Julia and me. I noticed that he was carefully adjusting the position of his chair so that he was an equidistance from each of us. Yes, he said finally, I have. He paused again and appeared to be in thought, so I asked, what did you hear? Let me tell you everything that happened, he said. When Father Carl and I left to go back to my mission, we expected to find Father Sebastian there along with the military. We expected an inquisition. When we arrived, we found that Father Sebastian and the soldiers had left abruptly several hours earlier after receiving a message. For a whole day, we didn't know what was going on. Then, yesterday, we were invited by a Father Kostus, whom I understand you have met. He told us that he was directed to my mission by Will James. Apparently, Will remembered the name of my mission from his conversation earlier with Father Carl and intuitively knew that we would need the information Father Kostus was bringing. Father Kostus had decided to support the manuscript. Why did Sebastian leave so suddenly? I asked. Because, Sanchez said, he wanted to speed up the implementation of his plans. The message he received told him that Father Kostus was about to expose his intention to destroy the ninth insight. Sebastian found it? Not yet, but he expects to. They found another document that indicated where the ninth is. Where is it supposed to be? Julia asked. At the Celestine ruins, Sanchez replied. Where is that?
Shivangla, you have to reduce your speaker volume. Now, in the movie, Will had indicated to Peter where the Celestine ruins were, and he had told him that I'm going there to find the ninth insight.
Where is that? I inquired. Julia looked at me about 60 miles from here. It's a dig the Peruvian scientists have excavated exclusively and with quite a lot of secrecy. It consists of several layers of ancient temples, first Mayan, then Inca. Apparently, both cultures believed there was something special about that location. I suddenly realized that Sanchez was concentrating on the conversation with unusual intensity. When I talked, he would focus totally on me without breaking his gaze at all. When Julia spoke, Father Sanchez shifted his position to focus completely on her. He seemed to be acting very deliberately. I wondered what he was doing, and at that precise moment there occurred a lull in the conversation. They both looked at me expectantly.
Okay. So now what was happening here? When we are speaking to someone, whether we are paying full attention or not, the other person is always observing. Okay. Now, when we are not paying attention, the other person realizes we are not paying attention and we start sucking energy from that other person. Now, during a conversation, I would say about 8 or 9 times out of 10, we are not hearing what the other person is saying, but we are thinking in our mind as to what we are going to answer. So that means you're not listening to that person, you're thinking about your answer. So you're really not getting what that other person is saying. Now, over here in this conversation, what was happening? Father Sanchez was paying full attention to the person who was speaking, and they were speaking in turn. दैट मीन्स दैट जिसका चांस था बात करने का वो बात कर रहा था. तो in any conversation, if you are aware and you start paying attention, you will find that the person who needs to speak up will light up. They light up like a bulb. Okay. So over here what they say, they both of them looked at me expectantly. So what does this mean? Now it is the chance of the hero or Peter to actually speak.
What? I asked. Sanchez smiled. It's your time to speak. Are we taking turns? I asked. No, Julia said. We are having a conscious conversation. Each person speaks when the energy moves to him. We could tell it had moved to you.
So now
I
in our workshops also, when we ask people to share, I'm actually observing that where has the energy moved and whose chance it is to speak. And we find that the conversation flows very easily. We don't go one at a time many times. We just jump from one person to the other, depending on where the energy is flowing and whose chance it is to speak.
didn't know what to say. Sanchez looked at me warmly. Part of the eighth insight is learning to interact consciously when in a group. But don't get self conscious. Just understand the process. As the members of a group talk, only one will have the most powerful idea at any one point in time. If they are alert, the others in the group can feel who is about to speak, and they can consciously focus their energy on this person, helping to bring out his idea with the greatest clarity.
So now again, what is happening over here? The idea here is to focus attention on the person who would have the brightest idea rather than operating from ego to have our word step on the toes of other people. So here everyone is supporting each other in the conversation. Now just imagine if in a meeting everyone paid attention to what everyone else was saying and they were all tuned to be able to follow the energy field as to whose chance it was to speak and who would have the best idea for the group. Don't you think everything would move much faster and in a much more systematic and a much more elegant way in any kind of conversation or in any kind of meeting? But we are always operating from ego and wanting to step over the other guy and, like crab mentality, pull the other guy down. But over here, they are having a conscious conversation.
Then, as the conversation proceeds, someone else will have the most powerful idea, then someone else, and so forth. If you concentrate on what is being said, you can feel when it is your turn. The idea will come up into your mind. Sanchi shifted his eyes to Julia, who asked, Matt, what idea were you having that you didn't express? I tried to think. I was wondering, I said finally. Why, Father Sanchez was looking intensely at whomsoever was speaking. I guess I was wondering what it meant. The key to this process, Sanchez said, is to speak up when it is your moment and to project energy when it is someone else's time. Many things can go wrong, Julia interjected. Some people get inflated when in a group. They feel the power of an idea and express it. Then, because that burst of energy feels so good, they keep on talking, long after the energy should have shifted to someone else. They try to monopolize the group.
So here again, the ego is creeping in.
Others are pulled back, and even when they feel the power of an idea, they won't risk saying it. When this happens, the group fragments and the members don't get the benefit of all the messages. The same thing happens when some members of the group are not accepted by some of the others. The rejected individuals are prevented from receiving the energy, and so the group misses the benefit of their ideas.
So whenever we are in a group, we must support each other to get the benefit of the knowledge and information of everyone in the group. Otherwise, there's a reason why a group comes together. Now, if you're wanting to isolate people, this fragmentation is a very, very dicey thing in the sense that it cuts us off from power that we would have ultimately actually received. So जो groupism हो जाता है, whenever there is groupism created, you will find it's the downfall of the organization. When everyone works together, that is when power is there. Okay.
Julia paused, and we both looked at Sanchez, who was taking a breath to speak. How people are excluded is important, he said. When we dislike someone or feel threatened by someone, the natural tendency is to focus on something we dislike about the person, something that irritates us.
So now let's look at this. Whenever we are focusing on something which we dislike about a person and irritates us, which side of the grid are we operating from? We immediately shift to the left side,
Left.
right? So the idea here is that we lose energy, we lose power, we lose consciousness when we shift to the left side of the grid.
Julia paused, and we both looked at Sanchez, who was taking a breath to speak. How people are excluded is important, he said. When we dislike someone or feel threatened by someone, the natural tendency is to focus on something we dislike about the person, something that irritates us. Unfortunately, when we do this, instead of seeing the deeper beauty of the person and giving them energy, we take energy away and actually do them harm. All they know is that they suddenly feel less beautiful and less confident, and it is because we sapped their energy.
So, so the control drama, Shimangla, you have to reduce your speaker here.
I've
So
reduced.
the control drama starts to play up, and we start sucking energy from the other person. So naturally, that other person will feel depleted.
Do you want me to reduce the mic?
Yes, you reduce the mic also.
That is why Julia said this process is so important. Humans are aging each other at a tremendous rate out there with their violent competitions. But remember, Sanchez added, in a truly functional group, the idea is to do the opposite of this. The idea is for every member's energy and vibration to increase because of the energy sent by all the others. When this occurs, everyone's individual energy merges with everyone else's and makes one pool of energy.
So this is like, again, the example that we use in the Vastu workshop of magnets. When we bring two magnets together, when we are bringing north and north, they'll repel. And in that process, they compress each other's energy. But when we bring north and south, the two magnets attach with each other, and the field of energy of both the magnets actually increases. So this happens in a group also. Now, if everyone is giving each other energy, then the field energy of the group is greater than the sum total of the individual energies. So we all grow together in the process.
It is as if the group is just one body, but one with many heads. Sometimes one head speaks for the body, sometimes another talks. But in a group functioning this way, each individual knows when to speak and what to say because he truly sees life more clearly. This is the higher person the eighth insight talked about in connection with a romantic relationship between a man and a woman. But other groups can form one as well. Father Sanchez's words made me think of Father Costus suddenly and of Pablo. Had this young Indian finally changed Father Costus' mind, leading him to now want to preserve the manuscript? Was Pablo able to do this because of the power of the eighth insight? Where is Father Costus now? I asked. Both individuals looked mildly surprised at my question, but Father Sanchez quickly replied. He and Father Carl decided to go to Lima to speak with our church leaders about what Cardinal Sebastian seems to have planned. I guess that's why he was so adamant about going to your mission with you. He knew there was something else he was supposed to do. Exactly, Sanchez said. A lull developed in the conversation, and we looked at one another, each of us waiting for the next idea. The question now, Father Sanchez finally said, is what are we supposed to do? Julia spoke first. I've had thoughts all along about being involved with the ninth insight somehow, of getting hold of it long enough to do something, but I can't quite see it clearly. Sanchez and I gazed at her intensely. I see this happening at a particular place, she continued. Wait a minute, the place I've been thinking about is at the ruins, at the Celestine ruins. There is a particular spot there between the temples. I'd almost forgotten. She looked back at us. That's where I need to go. I need to go to the Celestine ruins. As Julia finished, both she and Sanchez shifted their gaze to me. I don't know, I said. I've been interested in why Sebastian and his people are so against the manuscript. I found out it's because they fear the idea of our inner evolution. But now I don't know where to go. Those soldiers are coming. It appears that Sebastian is going to find the ninth insight first. I don't know. I've been thinking I'm involved somehow in convincing him not to destroy it.
So now again, he's got a thought, and this thought came to him previously also, that he is going to be the one who's going to actually convince Father Sebastian not to destroy the insight. So again, this is a download that he has got. Now he's actually paying attention also.
I stopped speaking. My thoughts went to Dobson again and then abruptly to the ninth insight. I suddenly realized that the ninth insight was going to reveal where we humans were going with this evolution. I had wondered how humans would be acting towards each other as a result of the manuscript, and that question had been answered with the eighth insight. And now the logical next question was, where is it all going to lead? How will human society change? That had to be what the ninth was about. I knew somehow that this knowledge could also be used to ease Sebastian's fears about conscious evolution, if he would listen. I still think Cardinal Sebastian can be convinced to support the manuscript, I said with conviction. You see yourself convincing him? Sanchez asked me. No, no, not really. I'm with someone else who can reach him, someone who knows him and can speak at his level. As I said that, Julia and I both spontaneously looked at Father Sanchez. He struggled to smile and spoke with resignation. Cardinal Sebastian and I have avoided a confrontation over the manuscript for a long time. He has always been my superior. He considered me his protege, and I must admit that I looked up to him. But I guess I always knew that it would come to this. The first time you mentioned it, I knew that the task of convincing him was mine. My whole life has set me up for it. He looked intensely at Julia and me, then continued. My mother was a Christian reformer. She hated the use of guilt and coercion when evangelizing. She felt that people should come to religion because of love, not out of fear. My father, on the other hand, was a disciplinarian who later became a priest and, like Sebastian, believed adamantly in tradition and authority. That left me wanting to work within church authority, but always seeking ways it should be amended so that higher religious experience is emphasized. Dealing with Sebastian is the next step for me. I've been resisting it, but I know I have to go to Sebastian's mission at Iquitos. I'll ride with you, I said.
So Sebastian knew that he was the one who was going to convince. Father
Sanchez knew.
Sanchez knew that he is the one who's actually going to convince, and Peter will be supporting him in that convincing.
The emerging culture. The road north wound through dense jungle and across several large stream tributaries. Father Sanchez told me of the Amazon. We had risen early and said a quick goodbye to Julia and then left in a vehicle Father Sanchez had borrowed, a truck with raised, oversized tires and four-wheel drive. As we traveled, the terrain rose slightly and the trees became more widely spaced and larger. This looks like the land around Vicente, I told Sanchez. He smiled at me and said, we've entered a 50-mile stretch of land about 20 miles wide that is different, more energized. It runs all the way to the Celestine ruins. On all sides of this area is pure jungle. Far to the right, at the edge of the jungle, I noticed a patch of cleared land. What is that? I asked, pointing. That, he said, is the government's idea of agricultural development. A wide stretch of trees had been bulldozed and pushed into piles, some partially burned. A herd of cattle grazed aimlessly amid the wild grasses and eroded topsoil. As we passed, several looked our way, distracted by the sound. I noticed another patch of freshly bulldozed land and realized the development was moving towards the larger trees we were graveling through. That looks awful, I said. It is, Sanchez replied. Even Cardinal Sebastian is against it. I thought of Phil. Maybe this was the place he was trying to protect. What had happened to him? Suddenly, I thought of Dobson again. Connor had said Dobson intended to come to the inn. Why had Connor been there to tell me that? Where was Dobson now? Deported? Imprisoned? It did not escape my notice that I had spontaneously perceived an image of Dobson in connection with Phil. How far is Sebastian's mission? I asked. About an hour, Sanchez replied. How are you feeling? What do you mean? I mean, how is your energy level? I think it's high, I said. Lots of beauty here. What do you think of the talk we three had last night? He asked. I thought it was amazing. Did you understand what was happening? You mean the way ideas were bubbling up in each of us at different times? Yes, but the greater meaning of that, I don't know. Well, I've been thinking about it. This way of consciously relating, in which everyone attempts to bring out the best in the others rather than to have power over them, is a posture the entire human race will eventually adopt. Think of how everyone's energy level and pace of evolution will increase at that point.
So now, if everyone gives everyone else energy, The crab mentality goes out of the window. Everyone is supporting each other in their growth. Just imagine what we could achieve, right? This bickering, backbiting, gossiping, everything will go out of the window.
Right, I said. I've been wondering how human culture will change as the overall energy level rises. He looked at me as if I had hit on the exact question. That's what I want to know too, he said. We looked at each other for an instant, and I knew we were both waiting to see who would have the next idea. Finally, he said, the answer to that question must be in the ninth insight. It must explain what will happen as the culture evolves forward. That's what I think, I said. Sanchez slowed the truck. We were approaching a crossroads, and he seemed undecided about which route to take. Do we 90 anywhere near San Luis? I asked. He looked directly into my eyes. Only if we turn left at this intersection. Why? Connor told me Dobson had been planning to come through San Luis on his way to the inn. I think it was a message. We continued to look at each other. You were already slowing down at this crossroad, I said. Why? He shrugged. I don't know. The most direct route to Iquitos is straight ahead. I just felt hesitant for some reason. A chill shot through my body. Sanchez raised one eyebrow and grinned. I guess we had better go through San Luis then. Huh? I nodded and felt a rush of energy. I knew that stopping at the inn and making contact with Connor was taking on more meaning. As Sanchez turned left and proceeded towards San Luis, I watched the roadside expectantly. 30 or 40 minutes passed and nothing happened. We rode through San Luis and still nothing of note occurred. Then suddenly a horn blew and we turned to see a silver jeep roaring up behind us. The driver was frantically waving. He looked familiar. That's Phil, I said. We pulled to the side of the road and Phil jumped out and ran to my side of the truck, grabbing my hand and nodding to Sanchez. I don't know what you're doing here, he said, but the road ahead is full of soldiers. You'd better come back and wait with us. How did you know we were coming? I asked. I didn't, he said. I just looked up and saw you pass by. We're about a half mile back. He looked around for a second, then added, we'd better get off this road. We'll follow you, Father Sanchez said. We followed as Phil turned his jeep around and headed back the way we'd come. He turned east onto another road and quickly parked. From behind a group of trees, another man walked out to greet the vehicle. I couldn't believe my sight. It was Dobson. I climbed out of the truck and walked towards him. He was equally surprised and hugged me warmly. It's great to see you, he said. Same here, I replied. I thought you were shot. Dobson patted my back and said, no, I guess I panicked. They simply detained me. Later, some official sympathetic to the manuscript let me go. I've been running ever since. He paused, smiling at me. I'm glad you're all right. When Phil told me he had met you at Vicient and then was arrested with you later, I didn't know what to think. But I should have known we would run into each other again. Where are you headed? To see Cardinal Sebastian. We think he intends to destroy the last insight. Dobson nodded and was about to say something, but Father Sanchez walked up. I quickly introduced them. I think I heard your name mentioned in Lima, Dobson said to Sanchez, in connection with a couple of priests that were being detained. Father Carl and Father Costus? I asked. I think those were the names, yes. Sanchez only shook his head slightly. I watched him for a moment. Then Dobson and I spent several minutes describing our experiences since we being separated. He told me he had studied all 8 insights and seemed anxious to say something else. But I interrupted to tell him that we had met Connor and that he had returned to Lima. He'll probably be detained himself, Dobson said. I regret I couldn't get to the inn in time, but I wanted to come to San Luis first to see another scientist. As it turned out, I couldn't find him, but I did run into Phil. And what is it? Sanchez asked. Maybe we ought to sit down, Dobson said. You won't believe this. Phil found a copy of a part of the ninth insight. No one moved. He found a translated copy? Father Sanchez asked. Yes. Phil had been doing something inside his vehicle and was now walking towards us. You found part of the ninth? I asked him. I didn't find it really. It was given to me. After you and I were captured, I was taken to another town. I don't know where. After a while, Cardinal Sebastian showed up. He kept probing me about the works at Vicient and my efforts to save the forest. I didn't know why until a guard brought me a partial copy of the ninth insight. The guard had stolen it from some of Sebastian's people, who had apparently just translated it. It talks about the energy of old forests. What did it say? I asked Phil. He paused, thinking. So Dobson asked again that we sit down. He led us to a spot where a tarpaulin was laid out in the center of a partial clearing. The place was beautiful. A dozen large trees formed a circle, and they fit 30 feet in diameter. Within the circle were highly fragrant tropical bushes and long stemmed ferns of the brightest green I had ever seen. We sat facing each other. Phil looked at Dobson. Then Dobson looked at Sanchez and me and said, the ninth insight explains how human culture will change in the next millennium as a result of conscious evolution. It describes a significantly different way of life. For instance, the manuscript predicts that we humans will voluntarily decrease our population so that we all may live in the most powerful and beautiful places on the earth. But remarkably, many more of these areas will exist in the future because we will be in, intentionally let the forests go uncut so that they can mature and build energy. According to the ninth insight, by the middle of the next millennium, he continued, humans will typically live among 500-year-old trees and carefully tended gardens, yet within easy travel distance of an urban area of incredible technological wizardry. By then, the means of survival, foodstuffs, and clothing, and transportation will all be totally automated and at everyone's disposal. Our needs will be completely met without the exchange of any currency, yet also without any overindulgence or laziness. Guided by their intuitions, everyone will know precisely what to do and when to do it, and this will fit harmoniously with the actions of others. No one will consume excessively because we will have let go of the need to possess and to control the security. In the next millennium, life will have become about something else.
What happened?
I thought you were going to explain. Guided by their intuitions, everyone will know precisely what to do and when to do it, and this will fit harmoniously with the actions of others. No one will consume excessively because we will have let go of the need to possess and to control for security. In the next millennium, life will have become about something else. According to the manuscript, he went on, our sense of purpose will be satisfied by the thrill of our own evolution, by the elation of receiving intuitions and then watching closely as our destinies unfold. The ninth depicts a human world where everyone has slowed down and become more alert, ever vigilant for the next meaningful encounter that comes along. We will know that it could occur anywhere on a path that winds through a forest, for instance, or on a bridge that traverses some canyon. Can you visualize human encounters that have this much meaning and significance? Think how it would be for two people meeting for the first time. Each will first observe the other's energy field, exposing any manipulations. Once clear, they will consciously share life stories until, elatedly, messages are discovered. Afterward, each will go forward again on their individual journey, but they will be significantly altered. They will vibrate at a new level and will thereafter touch others in a way not possible before their meeting.
So everyone will build everyone else's energy.
As we give him energy, Dobson became ever more eloquent and inspired with his description of the new human culture. And what he said rang true. I personally had no doubt that he was describing an achievable future. Yet, I also knew that throughout history, many visionaries had glimpsed such a world. Marx, for example, yet no way had been found to create such a utopia. Communism had become a tragedy. Even with the knowledge imparted in the first eight insights, I couldn't imagine how the human race could get to the place described by the ninth, considering human behavior generally. When Dobson paused, I voiced my concern. The manuscript says our natural pursuit of the truth will lead us there. Dobson explained, smiling directly at me. But to grasp how this movement will occur, perhaps it is necessary to visualize the next millennium in the same manner you studied the current one with me on the airplane. Remember? As though you were living through it in one lifetime. Dobson briefly informed the other men of the process and then continued. Think about what has occurred already in this millennium. During the Middle Ages, we lived in a simple world of good and evil defined by the churchmen. But during the Renaissance, we broke free. We knew there had to be more to man's situation in the universe than the churchmen knew, and we wanted the full story. We then sent science out to discover our true situation, but when this effort didn't provide the answers we needed right away, we decided to settle in and turned our modern work ethic into a preoccupation that secularized reality and squeezed the mystery out of the world. But now we can see the truth of that preoccupation. We can see that the real reason we spent 5 centuries creating material supports for human life what was to set the stage for something else, a way of life that returns the mystery to existence. That is what the information now returning from the scientific methods indicates. Mankind is on this planet to consciously evolve, and we learn to evolve and pursue a particular path, truth by truth. The ninth insight says the overall culture will transform in a very predictable way. He paused, but no one said anything. Obviously, we wanted to hear more.
So
I
basically, an
stop.
evolution, a spiritual evolution is coming where we all become consciously more aware as to what is happening all around us. Okay. And this is the game that we are playing in awareness also, enhancing our awareness so that we become more aware of what is happening around us. So exactly what is being said in the ninth insight is what we are actually physically experiencing when we are going through the processes that we are talking about in awareness. Okay. Anyone has anything to say? Anyone, anything?